I recently visited Newfoundland over the past summer for the first time since I was 10 years old. It was just as wonderful as I remembered, and I fell in love with it all over again. My grandfather is originally from Belle Island, and we had the opportunity to visit some of his brothers and sisters while we visited. It felt so good to be back, and I wanted to do something special to commemorate the trip and to honor that side of my family. I created a similar project with the other side of my family with my community connection video of Vienna. My dream is to eventually write a book about my grandfather's family, but for now, I'd like to dive into the history of the Belle of the Bay, Belle Island. In 1949, Newfoundland became the 10th and final province to enter Confederation. By 2001, an amendment was made to officially change the province's name to Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland has worn many hats as part of the Commonwealth of England, and even for a short period of time as its own dominion, before becoming part of Canada. Long before Newfoundland officially joined Canada, they played an integral part in both World Wars. They also became the backbone of a growing nation, with people traveling far and wide to work in their booming fishing and mining industries. Belle Island is a small island located in Conception Bay, Newfoundland. Unlike the province of Newfoundland, where there's a more general idea as to when humans first inhabited the area, the same cannot be said for Belle Island. The earliest documented settlers can be traced back to the early 1700s, but there's not an exact date for when this population influx started. First known as Great Belle Isle, there are 3 notable events I'll be discussing in the island's history: World War II, the closure of the Vienna mines, and the Belle Island boom, along with my own family's history in relation to Belle Island. Newfoundland played a huge role in the Second World War, despite not officially joining Canada until a few years after the war's end. The soldiers were known for their ferocity, loyalty, and never-say-die attitude. Aside from fighting, Belle Island itself had a flurry of activity during World War II. With the presence of the German Navy in Atlantic waters, the Newfoundland militia was called into action. They were assigned to guarding vulnerable areas on the island, including the oil reserves in St. John's and the Newfoundland Broadcasting Company's radio station. The guards later moved to protect the coast of Belle Island and the Vienna iron mines. The majority of Belle Island's ore was sent to Sydney, Nova Scotia, and represented around 30% of Canada's productive capacity of steel at the time. It's common knowledge that German U-boats traveled as far as the St. Lawrence River to wreak havoc while the Allies attempted to ship supplies overseas. The Canadians were concerned about the possibility of the enemy using bays along the coast as bases to attack their shipping ports. 2 searchlights and defense guns were installed for protection. Ultimately, this did little to help the eventual attacks against Belle Island. The anchorage used for bulk carriers sending iron ore to Europe was attacked on 2 occasions, September 5th and November 2nd, 1942. On September 5th, 4 freighters loaded with ore were awaiting orders. Around noon, Saginaga, a British freighter, was struck by 2 torpedoes and sunk with 7 crew members. Minutes later, the Canadian freighter Lord Strathcona was also hit. Thankfully, the crew had already abandoned the ship and no one was hurt. In the early morning of November 2nd, the Belle Island ore docks were hit again. This time, it was the SS Rosecastle and the Free French ship PLM-27. The poor visibility helped shield the enemy U-boat as it made its way around the area. Over 70 lives were lost during these 2 tragic days. On top of that, an errant German torpedo struck the Dominion Steel and Coal Company loading dock, where iron ore was loaded onto ships. This makes Belle Island one of the only locations in North America to receive a direct attack from the German forces during World War II. Mining began on Belle Island in 1895. Around 160 miners were employed, most either native to Belle Island or from the surrounding area of Portugal Cove. In December 1895, the first shipment of iron ore left Belle Island for Nova Scotia, which is where the majority was sent. Other smaller shipments went to the United States, Scotland, and later Germany. In 1899, a portion of the Scotia Company's mining rights were sold to the Dominion Coal Company of Cape Breton. This move introduced the growth of the steel industry in Nova Scotia that was based upon the shipments of iron ore from Belle Island. By 1903, the lack of surface ore forced the two companies mining ore from Vienna to begin underground mining. As time progressed, so did the technology surrounding mining operations. Around 1907, electricity replaced steam for most mine equipment. New infrastructure was also being built to introduce submarine mining over the next few years. Events such as World War I and the Great Depression brought halts to Belle Island's mining, but it would always come back stronger than ever. In 1927, a new contract with Germany was signed, bringing prosperity back to the industry. If not for Germany during the Depression years, the mines on Belle Island would have closed way earlier than expected. One of the major eventual causes of the closure of the iron ore mines in Belle Island was the discovery of large surface ore deposits in northeastern Quebec and western Labrador during the 1950s. After these findings and the increase of cheaper foreign competition, the Vienna mines began closing one by one. On June 30th, 1966, the last submarine mine, number 3, closed, which brought the end of mining on Belle Island after 71 years. In that time, around 79 million tons of ore had been shipped from the island. Naturally, the resource-driven industry of Belle Island suffered, and a large number of people moved to St. John's. On April 2, 1978, a loud explosion occurred on Belle Island. 2 cup-shaped holes were found in the ground that were measured at 2 feet deep and 3 feet wide. The explosion caused damages to homes and electrical wiring in the surrounding area, as well as some television sets in Lance Cove exploding at the same time as the blast. At first, many thought a ball of lightning had been the cause of the blast. However, meteorologists claimed that the atmospheric conditions at the time would not have been able to produce lightning. The boom could be heard 55 kilometers away in Cape Royal. This explosion and the strangeness behind it have led many to believe that it was a result of secret experiments by the Soviets or the US government. Scientists from all over have investigated, and it's now reported to have been a super bolt of lightning that caused the thundering boom. Belle Island was once a thriving area. At its peak, the island had around 12,000 residents. There were once around 100 businesses open during Belle Island's highest population years, including 18 schools, 3 churches, 4 halls, 3 hotels, over 30 shops, 2 theaters, a bank, a hospital, and an arena. My grandfather has told me many stories of his time on the Rock. He loves bringing up the one about him and his brothers traveling around the island, selling meat door to door. One would drive, while the other 2 would hop out and tackle opposite sides of the street, knocking on doors and selling as much as they could. My grandfather moved to Cambridge, Ontario in the early 1960s to work and start a family, but his heart remains at Belle Island even to this day. The Stoyles family originally built their home in Lance Cove, Belle Island during the 1930s. Today, the home still stands on Stoyles Road. It's used mostly as a family home for those visiting from out of town. I've gotten the opportunity to stay there twice, and there's truly nothing more special. Hearing my grandfather's sleeping arrangements with his 10 other brothers and sisters still blows my mind. The home now sits between both my great-uncle and my second cousin's house. My family owned the Stoyles Meat Market on Belle Island, which was famous for its homemade sausage and white and black puddings. The store started as the family selling meat out of the front door to their home. It then moved around a few buildings to its eventual location on the main street of Vienna in the 1950s. The store has since closed and been torn down, but a sign now remains where it once stood. As the sign reads, "No visit to Belle Island was ever complete without a meal that included their homemade sausages and puddings." My great-uncle Tom also opened his own store in 1984, closing it a few years ago. The city of Cambridge, Ontario also has some connection to my family. My great-uncle Dick had a huge impact on the surrounding community. He opened his first business in Cambridge in 1967, closing it 1 month before his passing earlier this year. Dick's businesses included a restaurant, a store, and a catering business. He also helped found the Newfoundland Club, a banquet hall that has held weddings, parties, and other events since 1976. Several people moved from Belle Island to Cambridge to find work, especially once the iron ore mines eventually shut down. As mentioned earlier, my grandfather also moved to Cambridge, where he met my grandmother before eventually settling in the small town where he still lives today. Belle Island and Newfoundland in general will always have a place in my heart. In the future, I hope to be able to spend more time there, visiting my family and learning more about their interesting history.